we welcome two strong women in Marcy Ian and Yara Sachs to their seats in the House of Commons to replace two seats vacated by men. So we're steadily moving towards a more gender-equal parliament.
Federal Liberals won 2 by-elections last night, holding on to a pair of Toronto area seats. Former broadcaster Marcy Ian took Toronto Centre with 42% of the vote, while small business owner Yara Sachs claimed York Centre with 45.7%. They both replaced men, and this means there are now 100 women in the House of Commons for the first time in history. But one woman that's still missing, the only woman currently leading a federal party. Annamie Paul came in second in Toronto Centre with 32.7% of the vote. So what's next for the newly minted Green leader? Annamie Paul, welcome back to the show.
Oh, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
So this was your second run in Toronto Centre, and this time you basically more than quadrupled your vote share, getting it up to just under 33%. Still second place, though. What's your takeaway from that outcome?
Well, the first always is that it's no fun to lose. We were definitely running to win. Just to be clear, we believed that we could win. We were running to win. But the other takeaways is that people were really responsive. We had 3 weeks to pull off a miracle. This is the safest Liberal seat in the entire country. And people responded to our positive message. They're clearly willing to vote a different way. They're clearly willing to vote for the Greens, and they clearly want change. And so that's all great stuff, just in terms of the next election, which, may be at any time.
I mean, you're right when you say this is viewed as a very safe Liberal seat. I know talking to the party leading up to this that they felt pretty good about their chances despite your candidacy. When you look at that dynamic and the fundamentals the Liberals have there, is there anything you could have done differently in this campaign that could have flipped the result, do you think?
Well, we could have had the by-election outside of a pandemic. This is the second wave, and this is an area that has very high rates of infection in some of the lowest income neighborhoods. So people, we had a very low voter turnout. It was 30%. So people were distracted, people were concerned, and that definitely had an impact on how many people went out to vote. And we could have had more time. We only had 3 weeks. And so, coulda, woulda, shoulda in a way, but at the same time, these weren't the ideal conditions to be having an election under.
How practically on a day-to-day basis did COVID affect your ability to campaign? I mean, I suspect the standard door-knocking, handshaking, crowds, that all had to go away.
That's exactly it. And there are 2 parts to an election. There's the voting day, but there's also the time that people take to get to know the candidates, their platforms, their ideas, the debates, the one-on-ones, the events. And so all of that had to go. It was really mostly, literature drops, and we did some street waving, of course, and a lot of phone calls. So these were very, very different circumstances to be having an election under, for sure.
So what now, though, for you? I mean, you're new as the leader of the party. You weren't able to win this seat last night. I mean, do you wait now for the general election to run, or are you going to look at one of your Green MPs and say, could you step aside and let the leader have a shot?
Well, listen, David, if you can tell me when the next election is going to be, then we can make a plan. It's very unfortunate, but we've seen over the last couple of weeks that a lot of the hyper-partisanship is creeping its way back into Ottawa, which means that this parliament and this session of parliament is not stable anymore. And so, we can be could it be in an election this fall? We could be in an election in the spring. It might be a year, we don't know. And that all of those things are factors when you're deciding where to run, in my case. So I'm going to be talking to the caucus. We're going to be figuring out a plan, and I will definitely be running somewhere come the next general election for sure.
But that wouldn't necessarily be Toronto Centre. I mean, is it Toronto Centre or bust for you, or would you look at running anywhere essentially that gives you the best path into the House of Commons?
Well, Toronto Centre was always very personal for me. As you said, I ran there in 2019. And so, it was pretty clear I was going to be the strongest candidate for us to run this time around, even before I won the leadership race. And it's somewhere that I was born, and I have really deep roots there. But putting that aside, now we're going to look at the whole country. We're going to look at all the ridings. We're going to look at all of the timing considerations. And as a party, in consensus, in consultation with our members, we're going to decide where and when will be the best time for me to run in the future.
You were kind of critical of the Liberals, though, of parachuting candidates into Toronto Centre. If you leave Toronto Centre to go somewhere else, would you not be parachuting in?
Well, that's not a parachute. First, I would have to be. We don't appoint And
Right.
so I would have to run in a nomination. I would have to have an invitation from the local association. And of course, I would live there. You know, I would be part of that community. And so, no, absolutely not. This appointing and dropping people in from out of town, that is not the Green Party way at all. And we won't be doing that in my case, or really in any case.
Okay, but on timing, look, I know we don't know when the next federal election is going to be, and it is an unstable minority, or it seems that way the past week or so. Are you prepared to ride it out and wait for that general election, or will you maybe talk to Elizabeth May, who stepped down as leader, and say, Ms. May, how about it? Would you step aside and let me run there to get into the House of Commons?
Oh dear, no, we are only headed in one direction. And you can see that from the results yesterday. If we can get a third of the votes in Toronto Centre with 3 weeks to do that, if we can quadruple our vote, as you said, and we were the only party, by the way, to increase their vote share. Every single other party dropped significantly. I mean, we don't need to substitute, swap out. You know, we're looking to gain seats, and so we're only headed in one direction, and that's up.
Okay, so you're not going to ask anybody to step aside to give you a chance to run in a by-election. That is not in the cards at all. Okay.
I mean, no one who got the results that we did last night would be considering such a thing.
Okay. The results last night in Toronto Centre were good, you know, the nearly 33%, but nationally the Greens are in the single digits in the polls. You're outside the House of Commons. It's a pandemic, right? So it's tough to do a lot of the things that a leader would do. So how do you now go forward to try to build your profile and grow your support while you're outside the House of Commons under these circumstances?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Touche.
And I thank you for that. No, it is just doing the work. You have to have conversation after conversation. We're going to be doing lots of events online between now and the next election. You know, a lot of community work because we really want to diversify our party as well. So, you know, there's no magic bullet. You just have to put in the work day in and day out. And there's no question, you know, the people that got to know us in Toronto Centre, they were very excited. They were really excited by our positive vision. I'm convinced that if we can spread the word throughout our networks and create new ones, that really we have a great chance in the next general election, whether I have a seat in Parliament beforehand or not.
Okay. Annamie Paul, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so the power panel has been listening in. I want to bring them back in for one more round. And David, I'd like to start with you. Is there a message in these by-election results? I mean, the Liberals held the seats, but they had a drop in support, a drop in turnout as well.
Let's not go too far. It's just a by-election. At the same time, two main points. The NDP is in real trouble. And two, the Conservatives did a very good showing in York Centre, which is showing that there's momentum for Erin O'Toole. Jagmeet Singh today is thinking, oh my goodness, the Green Party and Annamie Paul are coming on strong as being the alternative to the Liberals. And that's not very good. And wow for Annamie Paul, after what, 6 months in a very tough leadership campaign with the pandemic, to jump right into a by-election and scoring the way she did, wow. But now the tougher work begins to get, you know, the policy work, the election platform, and that's where Elizabeth May failed the last two elections. So we'll see, but very strong showing.
Francoise, the victories last night by the Liberals, the country's now at a milestone of 100 female MPs. Is it depressing or is it exciting that it took 100 years since women got the vote to get to 100 MPs in the House of Commons?
Oh, that's the real question. I'm both excited to see that number, and it's closing in on the 30% mark. Almost there, not yet, but almost. Exactly, to have waited since 1921 with Ms. McPhail to repeat that, to add a number so significant, it's kind of sad at the same time. But that being said, let's stay positive. I agree with what David said. I mean, a great showing, by Annamie Paul. And I say to all the parties that will be running in the general election, beware. She's solid. She's excellent in French. We heard her today answer some great questions, and I say fluent in French. So she's going to be a force to be reckoned with. And yes, the NDP, my old party, will have to check. And good luck, Annamie, because I almost won the first time, brought the NDP from 4th to 2nd in Gatineau, which I'd never seen that. And the next election, we won big time. So you never know. Stay in Toronto Centre.
Shakir, York Centre, very close. The Conservatives a tight second. They lost by 3.9 percentage points. Maxime Bernier, the People Party of Canada leader, got 3.6% of the vote. Should that worry Conservatives that Maxime Bernier's eaten into potential right-of-centre vote like that?
I mean, that's still a very small percentage of the vote, but I mean, ultimately, Conservatives did very well in that riding. I think it shows that Aaron O'Toole is doing a pretty good job. People in Toronto and the GTA are paying attention, and he is getting some wind in his sails. I would just caution the party in the sense of these are by-elections. I don't know if it would be wise to kind of move forward and say, provoke a general election. I'm not sure these results would play themselves out across the country. But ultimately, yeah, there's wind in Aaron O'Toole's sails. People are paying attention. He's doing a great job as leader so far. We'll see what happens when Max Bernier runs in a general election if he chooses to do so. I mean, he has no seat right now. His party has no seat right now. I suspect it to be the same way whenever the next election occurs.
Jason, what do you make of this, in particular, David's point that maybe this is a very bad sign for the New Democrats to be so far behind in large urban ridings, which seems to be the sort of area where they need to be looking for growth, especially after all of these months of sort of being the partner with the Liberals in a lot of the parliamentary votes?
They've never done well in New York Centre. They've been somewhat competitive in that super safe seat. Obviously this was a showpiece riding for Annamie Paul. She's going to have a hell of a time finding the right seat for her to get a foothold somewhere. But in terms of the NDP, I was following the other election in Saskatchewan last night, and they were really excited in Saskatchewan because they had done really, really well in the by-elections in Saskatoon and Regina. Lo and behold, yet another gigantic Saskatchewan party majority, and the Saskatchewan NDP, their leader, may lose his own seat for the third straight election. So in as much as by-elections mean much. But, obviously this, I expect that the Jagmeet Singh is going to be Trudeau's best friend, keeping his government intact as long as he wants, because that party has no money and no apparent foothold anywhere.
But Francoise, do you agree with that? Is that the message that the NDP should take from these results? Or again, are we making way too much out of 2 Toronto ridings?
Maybe we're making way too much out of 2 Toronto riding, but I think it has to make them pause and reflect about the whole situation. Because at one point in time, where do people stop seeing you as an extension of Liberals and then try voting Liberals at the next election? Do you want to be so close to the governing party? When you see the Liberals, because we're not talking about it, but the Liberals' result yesterday were... you have to reflect on those results if you're the Liberals. I mean, all the parties together in Toronto Centre don't even come close to the amount of votes that Mr. Morneau got the last time. I know it's a by-election, but still, it has to make them reflect on if they wait too much. They might wait too much and don't like the result the next time, and so do the NDP. They have to reflect. What strategy? I understand when Jagmeet keeps saying, I'm there for Canadian, but Canadian doesn't seem to give him the credit for working for them. So it's not an easy decision for them to make at this point in time, but they will have to make it soon.
Shakir, just quickly, what do you think the Liberals take from this? I know going in, they felt pretty good about Toronto Centre. They were worried about York Centre, thought it would be really close. That's kind of how it turned out. But that overall erosion of their support there, what should they take from that?
I just think they might be a little more cautious in terms of wanting to force an election or making a lot of these other motions confidence votes. I think they might want to spend some time reflecting on what's happened in Toronto Centre, the direction they're going in their COVID response. And should things, the Ethics Commissioner still has to have a report on the whole week charity scandal and what's going on there. So I think they're going to sit back for a second, reevaluate things, and maybe not be so quick to want to force an election in the near term.
Okay, folks, we are out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. Francoise, David, Shakir, and Jason, thank you so much for your insights. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.